All right, guys, welcome to my second annual Christmas weather presentation along Santa's route. We'll be looking at what I think we'll be seeing for his ETAs on various Santa Cam locations that I picked out from last year. And along with that, my weather prediction when he will get to those specific places. So we're starting off. We will be starting off at North Pole Arctic, everybody. So ETD, that is estimated time departure. And DST, I know North Pole doesn't have an actual time zone because all of them converge at once, or at least as we know of, that's the case. But for purposes with this, I put the time zone at Dateline Standard Time. That means the international dateline. That's the time across the dateline, because that goes right into the North Pole. So I was like, that's probably the best thing I can come up with. So at Dateline Standard Time, his estimated time departure is at 11 p.m. And for people who don't know, that's 3 a.m. Pacific Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. That same time, Dateline Standard Time, that's 11 p.m. And then he gets back to North Pole at a little after 10 p.m. the next night, Dateline Standard Time. It may not be exactly 10:10. This is more of an estimate because it's harder to predict when Santa will get back to North Pole than when he leaves the North Pole, but it should be pretty close. It won't be too long after 10. It would just be 10 something. And I would say for both his departure and arrival time, the conditions should be like this for most of the time. So the conditions shouldn't be too different for both of these nights when he leaves and when he gets back. So during both of these times, I would say there could be a few snowflakes around out the North Pole, partly cloudy skies otherwise, but lots of dry conditions, just maybe a few snowflakes out that way. -15 to -25 degrees Fahrenheit when he leaves the North Pole and when he gets back to North Pole. Insane. That is equivalent to -29 Celsius. All right, DSP over Arctic. This is him coming down the international dateline at about 11:06 p.m. is my estimate, Dateline Standard Time. That's him over the Arctic right before he goes to his first stop, which is usually Russia. At this time, it cools down a little bit, but not by a lot. Still -5 to -15 degrees, I'm estimating, which is in Celsius, -23. Mostly cloudy skies, though, by that point. Completely dry conditions once it gets down there. Auckland, New Zealand. My ETA is 10:49 a.m. New Zealand. Daylight time, mostly clear skies at that point, 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which is equivalent to about 17 degrees Celsius. My ETA for Sydney, Australia is 2:34 a.m. Australian. I'm assuming that's Eastern Australia daylight time. That time zone in Sydney, 2:34 a.m. Partly cloudy skies, dry, 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 20 degrees Celsius. Over in Seoul, South Korea, my ETA is 11:26 p.m. Korea Standard Time. That would be partly cloudy at that point. Kind of cold though, 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit with that temperature of -2 Celsius. Getting over to Shanghai, China. My ETA is 10:38 p.m. China Standard Time. Don't get that confused with Central Standard Time. That's actually China Standard Time. Mostly clear skies, 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly not negative, positive 6 degrees Celsius. Singapore, my ETA is 11:46 p.m. Singapore time, so that would be scattered storms I'm projecting at that time when Santa gets in there. So it could be a slightly bumpy ride getting in there, but luckily not an abundance of storms, just a couple here and there, but something for Santa to keep an eye on for sure. Partly cloudy skies, 75 to 80 degrees when he arrives in Singapore in Fahrenheit, but that temperature is 25 degrees Celsius. Oh, so here's an interesting one. So let me make it clear, I have no perfect idea on when Santa will actually get to the ISS. That is much less predictable than everything else. Everything else I think will be a pretty darn good ETA, but the ISS is going to be the one that may be hours off, but I included it anyway because I want to see how close I get. It's possible I get close, so if I do, I wanted to include this in here. Based on the past 4 years of Santa getting to the ISS, they're all hours apart, and they all meet in a different place up above the Earth into the atmosphere, right? So if I just average out the past 4 years, it lands somewhere in the Indo-Pacific Ocean, roughly somewhere around Southeast Asia. I could be wrong. This is not a guarantee, just a guess that I came up with based on the past 4 years, just averaged out. Because in 1 year, he, I think, visited New Zealand. The other year, he visited towards Madagascar. The other year was like Antarctica or close to it. And the other year was, I don't even remember, but it was... It might have been, I don't remember on the top of my head, but the point is it's very variable, but literally I just averaged it all out, and my guess comes to somewhere in the Indo-Pacific across Southeast Asia. And again, I know the ISS uses UTC GMT. I did not include that as a time zone with this though, because it's obviously during the day GMT when this happens, during the daylight hours most likely. But in reality, Santa will be visiting the ISS at night. So I just grabbed the closest time zone I could to on Earth, if that makes sense. So ACT, that's kind of it. It's not like an official time zone, but it's an idea that like various countries across Southeast Asia are trying to like adapt to, even though it's not actually like a full thing that's being used right now. But that's the closest I got. 11:49 p.m. ACT. I think that's a scene. What is it called? A scene. I think it's the scene standard time or something like that. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, very cold, negative 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 157 degrees Celsius. Man, I did research on this. Apparently, on when the ISS is the closest in front of the sun, on the sunlit side, it goes up to 250 plus 250 Fahrenheit. But because my calculations show the ISS possibly when Santa will meet somewhere right in the middle of the darkness on the opposite side of the sun, it should be I did some research and it should be the coldest. So the coldest flip side of that is negative 250 Fahrenheit when Santa visits the ISS, and they don't have weather conditions that we would normally see here on Earth in the atmosphere, but they do have space weather. So it looks like there's a possibility for a G1 geomagnetic storm. What does that mean? Well, on Earth, that actually contributes to northern light chances, but over in the atmosphere where the ISS is, that actually interferes possibly a little bit with the spacecraft, actually. So in that case, that if it gets strong enough, the astronauts like to reduce the amount of time that they would be doing a spacewalk or anything like that when these possibilities are in place, because there could be some negative impacts in that way, but they are very minor, so it doesn't look that big of a deal. Along with that, there's also some interference with satellite frequencies and stuff, that in radio stuff, that could be interference, maybe not directly to the ISS itself, but it absolutely could have differences and maybe issues with some satellite operations elsewhere that are maybe connected to the ISS that they're feeding information through. So keep an eye on that. And also, you know, Santa should be aware of that as he goes to the ISS, because I'm sure he has a lot of high-tech gear on his sleigh, and that's just something that we need to consider. But we'll see how close I get for that estimate. We'll just have to wait and see. Dubai, here we go. 9:44 p.m. Dubai time. Mostly clear is my estimate for 9:44. 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly 23 degrees Celsius. Getting on over to Athens, Greece. My ETA is 9:52 p.m. Eastern European time. Again, scattered storms are possible. So Santa should take caution getting into there, but luckily it doesn't look overly severe, just something to keep an eye on. Otherwise, partly cloudy, 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 8 degrees Celsius. Getting into Rome, Italy. My guess is 10:26 Central Eastern European Time, partly cloudy, between about 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 6 degrees Celsius. Berlin, Germany, my ETA is 10:55 p.m. Central Eastern European Time, and that would be mostly cloudy, dry, but it could be kind of foggy. So Santa will definitely want to be using Rudolph in this case. He's going to want to really have Rudolph shine right through the fog because it could be pretty foggy in parts of Berlin. 35 to about 40 degrees, so not quite freezing fog, but, cold enough to where, you got to take caution getting through that. Roughly 3 degrees Celsius. Getting into Paris, we're looking at 11:28 p.m. Central European Time. And that could be cloudy and foggy conditions, so that's even more severe fog, honestly, than more widespread fog than even Berlin was. So Santa will definitely want to use Rudolph a lot in this instance, really relying on him to get through the fog. Otherwise, isolated drizzle, because it could be really thick clouds and fog too, so Santa will want to consider that. Getting into Paris, 11:28 p.m. local time, 45 to about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 8 degrees Celsius. Madrid, Spain, ETA is 11:42 Central European Time, mostly clear skies, 45 to 50 Fahrenheit, so roughly 8 degrees Celsius. Getting into London, England, my ETA is 11:41 p.m. GMT. So we're looking at mostly cloudy skies at that time, about 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 12 degrees Celsius. Getting into Dublin, Ireland, not too long after that, my ETA is 11:49 p.m. GMT, although it could be slightly cooler and slightly clearer, so I'm going for partly cloudy skies, 45 to 50 Fahrenheit, which is roughly 10 degrees Celsius. Getting into Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, I'm projecting 10:06 p.m. Brazil time. Isolated storm, maybe. Not maybe quite as many storms as like Berlin and I think Madrid that I talked about, but there could be an isolated one around. So I don't think as much caution needs to be taken with this, but still, could a storm just brew up right where Santa's flying? Possibly in Rio. So something to keep an eye on. Partly cloudy skies. Still a decent amount of dry time, though, around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 23 degrees Celsius. STSS, one of their Santa cameras, which is a radar that tracks Santa over Greenland at my estimation is probably 10:50 or so Western Greenland time. There could be isolated snow, very isolated though, kind of where the STSS is kind of located up above. Maybe not so much, but eastern Greenland area definitely will be more snow. Mostly cloudy skies. Here we go, -30 to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow, roughly -37 degrees Celsius. And then the Air Force escorts him on over to Newfoundland. So roughly my ETA, maybe somewhere around 10:39 p.m. Newfoundland Standard Time, partly cloudy skies, 20 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly -5 degrees Celsius. Getting over to Cape Cod, a radar station based in Massachusetts, although he's not visiting Massachusetts until later. He's just flying over the Atlantic at this point. So as he flies over to the Atlantic, and Cape Cod captures him as he flies from Newfoundland back to South America for the second time. He can expect moderate rain as he's traveling over the Atlantic. So, definitely something to consider at this point. It could get kind of wet during this period. Mostly cloudy skies, 40 to about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 7 degrees Celsius. That ETA is around 10:19 Atlantic Standard Time. All right, Washington, D.C., the first Santa cam as of last year into the U.S. My ETA is 10:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, partly cloudy skies, 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 3 degrees Celsius. New York City, New York, I'm projecting somewhere around 10:36 p.m. Eastern Time, partly cloudy skies, 30 to about 35 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 0 degrees Celsius. Toronto, Ontario, Canada, I'm projecting 11:12 p.m. Eastern Time. It could be mostly dry, but I cannot rule out a few snowflakes around Toronto when Santa comes. So something to keep an eye on. Otherwise, mostly dry, mostly cloudy, 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly -2 Celsius. Getting into Indianapolis, Indiana, 11:31 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mostly dry, but there could be a little bit of drizzle around. So be sure to keep an eye on that as Santa flies into Indianapolis. Again, 11:31 maybe. That's my best guess right now. Cloudy skies, 35 to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 3 degrees Celsius. New Orleans, Louisiana. My guess is 11:11 Central Standard Time. At that time, we'll see partly cloudy skies, about 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 14 degrees Celsius. Getting into Chicago, Illinois, not any precipitation it's looking like, but mostly cloudy skies at the time Santa gets into that region. I'm projecting about 11:36 p.m. Central Standard Time. Mostly cloudy skies, about 30 to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 0 degrees Celsius. Getting into Houston, Texas, one of the stormiest places that I saw across the world, possibly, would be 12:14 a.m. Central Standard Time is my ETA for Houston, Texas. And it could be pretty stormy getting into Houston. Even stormier than some of the locations that I mentioned before that had the chance for those storms. So Santa should be definitely taking caution as he flies into Houston. Around 12:14 a.m. is my guess. Mostly cloudy skies, 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly 17 Celsius. Colorado Springs, Colorado, the home of NORAD. My ETA is around 11:40 Mountain Standard Time. Should be partly cloudy, about 30 to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, so right around freezing at 0 degrees Celsius once Santa flies to Colorado Springs. San Francisco to California, ETA, I'm projecting 11:50 PST. That would be partly cloudy skies and dry, temperature of about 45 to 50 Fahrenheit, which is roughly 8 Celsius. Seattle, Washington, which is only a state above me, I'm projecting 12:04 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Isolated drizzle, partly cloudy skies, but mostly dry. But, in Seattle fashion, classic Seattle fashion, there could be some raindrops around. Partly cloudy skies, 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 6 degrees Celsius. Anchorage, Alaska, my ETA is 11:29 p.m. Alaska Standard Time. Kind of like Greenland, where maybe Anchorage itself, maybe not a lot of snow. I mean, there could be, a few flakes around, but maybe another part of Alaska further east, just like Greenland, could see more snow. But as a whole, snow somewhere in that region. Maybe just not so much in town. Mostly cloudy skies, about 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit when he gets there around 11:29 local time. Roughly -2 Celsius. And finally, the last Santa cam from last year was the E3 Sentry over the Pacific when he's flying to Hawaii from Alaska, making his final rounds before he gets back to the North Pole. There you go. ETA of 11 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, because that's the closest time zone to the E3 Sentry as he makes his way to Hawaii. At that time, he will be experiencing rain showers, but not as heavy as the Atlantic, definitely lighter. Rain showers mostly cloudy, 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly 13 degrees Celsius. And that is, in fact, my predictions for this upcoming season as he makes his way across the world. And again, that circulates back to where he gets back to the North Pole at around 10 p.m. Daylight Standard Time the following night, not too long after he gets back into the Pacific, and that E3 Sentry Santa camera gets back, tracks him over the Pacific, and he visits Hawaii and back to North Pole. That's that. So the main takeaways is, honestly, it's kind of similar to last year. It's a milder winter. It's a milder season for Santa to get around. So that is kind of a good thing in this certain case. Obviously, long-term effects could be a little bit, there could be some cons to that because, the more milder it is, the more chance for drought conditions and, wildfire potentials in the summer. But generally, in terms of Santa getting around this Christmas, it should be a pretty easy flight, in my opinion. Again, a lot like last year, just mild and more uneventful. But like I said, there will still be some of those extremes that Santa will have to take caution. And that is, the coldest, especially in space, of -250 Fahrenheit. He needs to take caution for that. -20, -30, -40 in that time, in that range in Fahrenheit for Greenland, and especially leaving the North Pole at the Arctic, although he is probably pretty used to that. And obviously those snowier parts, it will be snowiest in parts of Alaska and Greenland, not all, definitely more mild, so it won't be widespread, but parts of those regions might see more snow than the rest of the world, but not a lot. And then the rainiest near the Atlantic for sure, and then warmest in South America, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and in space, but only during the daylight, which Santa will actually not be getting to the ISS during the daylight. So you won't have to worry about that particular plus 250 Fahrenheit as he visits the ISS at night. That's my weather presentation. Hope you guys enjoyed and ready to track Santa here, as we only have, we have 2 hours and 35 minutes until the NORAD tracker countdown ends and Santa starts making preparations. Who is hyped? We are ready to go. Continue to track with us all day and night.